balloons were coming to town in the summer. So I decided, that sounds like fun, I'm going to go get involved in that. And I did, and I met Steve Lanyar and Norton Grimm, and I became a part of their crew. And the next year, 1971, Steve asked me to be the balloon postmaster. Now, I don't know how many of the pilots remember that, but I guarantee you 90% of them didn't like me. Because I would come walking up with a big bag of mail that had been stamped, and I'd tie it on their balloon, and they had to take it up, come back down, sit and sign all of those, and then return them. I think we only did that 1 year. So, but by 1974, I had bought my own balloon, and I was hooked on hot air. For 18 years, Simpson, Indianola, and the BFA hosted the balloon championships here. And I was talking to Bruce Comstock earlier today, and I think he said what all of the aeronauts think, which was Indianola and Simpson has become a major part of our lives because of what they've done. They housed us, they fed us, they supported us, and it was great. So, that allows me to say I am honored to introduce the president of Simpson College, Dr. Marcia Kelleher.
Thank you. It's wonderful to see so many people here tonight. Welcome both to Indianola as well as to Simpson. You know, when I was a little girl, I really wanted to be a hot air balloon pilot, but my career just never got off the ground. We know you were deflated last year, you had to cancel, but hope that your spirits were lifted during this year knowing that the festival was going to go on. Here at Simpson, we're very thankful that in 1969, Tom Ackerman, Don Hurston, and Gary Ribble, among many others of you who are here tonight, chose the Simpson soccer field for the 1970 National Hot Air Balloon Championships. And from there, I guess things have just been up, and away. Simpson's proud to have been a partner all these years. In addition to thanking all of you for your vision in participation in a tradition that has truly become a hallmark of the Indianola community, we want to say a special thanks to someone who's played a prominent role in the hot air balloon community, Indianola, and Simpson. A leader, a mentor, and a supporter of all three communities. Gary Rubel received his pilot's license in, I believe, 1974. And because of him, there'll be several pilots flying the skies tonight. Gary, you provide meaning to the phrase, life is a beautiful ride. Thank you for all that you have done for so many and showing us that we don't need wings to fly. On behalf of Simpson College, we have a small gift to give to you. I've got to go over to the field, but I hope you have a wonderful night, and I'm looking forward to hearing about all the wonderful memories you make tonight when you're back here next year. Thank you all for being here.
You know, it's so great to have Simpson here to talk because Simpson is such an important part of ballooning. And so, I don't know what else to say. I'm sure all of you agree with that. A couple of things. One thing is we have a limited number of the programs, and the programs are specifically, we want to make sure every 70's balloon pilot gets one. That's why there's not one in every seat, but there are extras. So you can fight over the extra ones at the table. But no, we just want to make sure all of the balloon pilots get one. And now, if we're okay, we're going to start the meal part. So we have a buffet. we're not releasing people at
love that you all have for those years, for Indianola, and for the fresh and vibrant period of ballooning that really was. I know I'm thrilled to be here tonight. A lot of thank yous that I want to get through first, but I do promise to drop this mic at 20 minutes because we all want to hear from you some of the stories that you recall, even if they're lavishly embellished. Whether they're true or not, we want to hear from you because, well, there are many things that went on that I don't know anything about, and so we want to do that. A few things, sort of housekeeping. Don't you think the t-shirts are really nice? And the sales actually surpassed our expectations. And many of you have asked for more, which we don't have any of. But if you would give your name to Becky Wigland at the museum, she'll make a list. And when it reaches a certain threshold, we'll order more. Because this design is pretty special. It really captures those years. And I want to thank my wife for her creative artistry in that. And as long as we're thanking members of the committee, of course, my lifelong comrade from the second grade, Norton Grimm, his wife Judy, and Don Lamb, who you've met. To be honest, if it weren't for Don Lamb and the chef, there'd be no food on these plates. So thank you, worked on go. Thank you, Don. And last, you've already been quite aware of Gary Rubel's involvement. He's the hometown native balloonist, you could say. And he was so important in many of the details that I couldn't handle. I'm come from California, so I dumped a lot of things on Gary Rubel. So where's Gary? Thank you. And that little balloon out there, he actually sewed himself, and isn't that cute? So. Photography, Mark is in the room or has been circulating, and the one thing that we really want to get out of this, I'm sure you're clear on that, is we want to get a group photo, a good group photo, with everybody's face forward, everybody's eyes open, because that's going to be part of the museum, as it should be. Because we've done group photos infrequently, I'm afraid. You've only probably seen 2 decent group photos from the 70's. Nothing from 71, 2 and 3 are represented. After that, I'm not aware of any. So this is a grand occasion to get photos of all the pilots. And to say that we have veteran pilots here is a gross underestimation. What we really have is a room full of living legends. And I'm humbled to be here among you. And it's really amazing, really, to get this many people from across the country. Sadly, as we all know, many of our comrades are unable to be here. And we had this tribute slideshow to many who have sadly fallen. So isn't it great to have as many as we do have? It's certainly more than I expected. So the question is often raised, how did such an important historical event spring out of Indianola? if you read the introduction into the programs, you already know the answer to that question. But it's quite fascinating, and one that I didn't know fully myself. But before we launch into that, there are two people without whom none of us would be here. And I'm not talking about your parents. But they are the parents of this event. And you know them well, and they deserve our utmost appreciation. They are, of course, Ed Yost and Don Kirsten. To say that these men are icons of our sport is obvious to anyone that's been involved in this sport. Happy to have Steve Kirsten here, descendant of Don.
Here,
Where's
put
Steve?
your hand.
Where are they? There you are. So without these gentlemen, again, this event wouldn't have happened. As you read about the story, it unfolded in 1969 when they basically brokered a deal with the Iowa State Fair. But they didn't have a place for more than 10 balloons up there. So there had to be a staging ground to eliminate the rest. We didn't know what the rest would be, but that turned out to be Indianola. And our thanks goes to these two gentlemen, Tom Ackerman, who was going to be here tonight, but sadly could not. Tom was hired as the alumni director for Simpson, and his first task was to stage a homecoming event. And he thought, well, wouldn't it be great to have a couple of balloons? He didn't even know if people did balloons. But he ended up calling the BFA, and they put him in touch with Don Kirsten. And at the same time, Don Kirsten was trying to find some place to stage these preliminary events. So it was a perfect storm, perfect synchrony of needs. And Tom Kirsten and Don Ackerman set about to convince Simpson College to be involved. Gary Grubel got involved. And so, as you recall, Simpson was the staging ground in those early years. And you know, I never took a class at Simpson College, but I have to congratulate them. I really appreciate the dormitory experience that they gave me that I never had in other colleges. It was, well, different. And I'm told that they still offer dormitories at a cut rate price here, if you're willing to go without air conditioning. I don't want to elaborate on it, but those were fun periods in Simpson College. We should pay tribute to two other ladies that all of you know. Becky Weedson, Marlene Wall. These are earlier pictures of them. And all of you have name tags with earlier pictures of yourself. But we recognize that 50 years have gone by, so I thought it would be fun to honor these two ladies. And you know them well because they support, on a voluntary basis, the museum, which we've all seen. And if we haven't seen, there's a tour scheduled for tomorrow at 4 p.m. for those that would like to do that. So a little bit about the Nationals before Indianola, because there were a few recognized national championships. The first one was actually put together by Don McCarr in 1963, Kalamazoo, Michigan. Dick Pollard won that event. And then it moved to the Reno Air Races. And then nothing happened. I really don't know what happened after that, except it disappeared for 4 years. And again, it was up to Don Kirsten and Ed Yost to make sure that it got started again. And indeed it did. And this is the iconic photo that Bill Meadows has reconstructed. You saw it in the foyer. This is the stand-up of the 10 balloons that made the cut out of Indianola. And we were lined up in the infield at the Iowa State Fair, which, to be honest, is not the best place to fly a balloon from. We were sort of in the infield with fireworks stands around the outside and grandstands to surmount, and residential areas, and not to mention the control zone of the nearby airport. So it wasn't very conducive to balloon flying. There were 16 registered pilots. We had to get rid of, we had to eliminate 6. And I was among the 6. And you can see those that were eliminated. Many of them are here tonight. Reaver Chambers, Bob Olagunda. Those that pre-failed are listed in order of their final standing. Frank Pritchard. We all know that Frank was the recipient that first year. And we're happy to have his daughter, Leslie, who has gone on to an illustrious career in ballooning, and I know her dad would be very proud. Frank Pritchard, William Grab, Dr. William Grab, Wilma, we all knew her as Willie. I spoke to her a couple weeks ago, and she's now 90, doing well, but she didn't think she could really make the journey. But she sends you her love, and I know we send her back her love. She was just such a wonderful lady. On this list, Norton Grimm's on there, and Dennis Floden. And so that was the finishing in 1970. And as I said the other night, 16 balloons seemed like a lot because it was a lot. That was pretty much all the balloons there were in the country. And it was great to meet everybody because it's funny, we have different balloons, different ways of doing things. And we really shared ideas and just had a lot of fun. This is the photo you saw in the foyer. Bill Meadows had the presence of mind to get each of these individuals photographed against their balloon. And this will be in the museum, of course, as it should be. This is the field that we flew from. And we laid out 10 balloons for 3 nights. There were different events. Nobody hit the grandstands. In fact, there were no accidents that I'm aware of. It came off pretty well without a hitch. That's Frank Pritchard's balloon, Don Kirsten's balloon, Bill Grab's balloon. You can tell it was 1970 from the cars. This is the look back. So you can see this was a pretty hairy place to fly a balloon out of. Grandstands, tons of cars, but it was nevertheless successful. The person involved in making that all happen, more than anybody else, was, Ed Yost. Ed Yost was called the clerk of the course. I never could understand what that meant or why it was chosen. What kind of clerking was he doing? Anyway, he did a great job. And I was on the events committee, and I felt pretty protected because Ed Yost was, well, he was the chairperson. And everybody expected Ed Yost to keep doing it. But right after this event, he resigned. I don't know why. But he did resign, and there I was, naked and afraid, because I was sort of next in line. So it's not like I had any qualifications, but nobody else did either. So Don Kirsten said, you know, you can do this. You'll get plenty of help. And I did get plenty of help. And it did come off well. So in 71, this was actually the entry form, which was hammered out on a typewriter. And this is Willie Picard's entry. I think it's funny because where it says, time in balloon, she has a question mark. And total time in balloon, blank. There were 23 entrants, and actually we were stunned that there were that many, and worried about how we were going to accommodate them. There were some non-coms, including myself and Norton. We were part of the official group. But look at that list of finalists, starting with Dennis Floden, Tom Ackerman, Reber Chambers, Bruce Comstock. They're all here tonight.
Tom Orman.
Skip Tom? I'm sorry.
Tom Orman.
I'm sorry. But a round of applause for these folks. Again, they're living legends, and this is just a historical confirmation of their achievement. So 23 balloons in 1971. We didn't know what we'd get in 72, and I was foolish enough to sign up again for 72. And this is the almost the poster for 1971. It's a beautiful shot, taken by actually Dick Stamberg. And very serene, very pretty, and a very laid-back year, actually, 71. 72, we had quite a few more, 42, and we were terrified as to how we would accommodate them on the field, and the truth is we didn't. We had to overflow into the grassy area next to it. And there is by now a film that many of you saw. It was produced by Lark Cigarettes, but it was really a good documentary of that year. Bruce won, Danny Floden's in here, Steve Kirsten, Bill Meadows, Tom Orman, and down on to the list. And that's not all of them. But this is the picture that many of you have seen. It's the only known group photo of those people. And not all of them are even identified. So if you know number 2, 7, 10, or 20, let us know. We don't have a key for this, so we can't tell you whether you're right or not. Yeah. So just put, Alfred E. Newman or something. I don't know, but we would be grateful for any insight as to these missing aeronauts are. This shot was taken by Dick Stamberg, so he's not even in the photograph. This is a summary that I put together after that event because I had to account for all the money that was spent. And on the list of BFA personnel, you'll see Jim Winker, Robert Rex, Tracy Barnes, Don Lamb, who was the balloon postmaster, Ruth Schmidt, who's here tonight, assistant balloon postmaster, and Chuck Street, who was the announcer and media coordinator, which actually was quite an important job because there were a lot of media that were interested and they had to be informed and brought together. Interesting that we spent $400 for helium so that Wilma Picard could fly up in a garbage bag of a balloon. And she told me the other night she, of course, had never been in a gas balloon. And she asked Don Picard that night, how am I supposed to fly this thing? He said, well, just pretend it's a hot air balloon. And she flew it for about 20 minutes, which was a record because there was no record before then. And she was on the radio to Don and he said, well, Willie, you better get down because we have to go to dinner here. But that picture is so beautiful. It was on the cover of Balloonia. And And I remember being there and so awestruck at her courage to get into this kind of a thing and fly off for the first time, putting her faith in, well, polyethylene. Also on this list is a bunch of incidental stuff. But the total cost for this event was $5,000, actually $5,055, and Indianola gave us $5,000. So the net cost of the BFA was $55. I think that's less than what they're spending these days. So this is the photo from 1972, quite a crowded scene, as you can see. We had to overflow into the park. You might even see your balloon in there. And in fact, that photo was the one that is reproduced here on your t-shirt. How about 1973? I'm not going to go through the whole decade, just to give you a break. But at 73, it jumped up to 57. These are the finalists. Tom Orman up there at the top. David Robinson's here tonight. Where's David? David, there he is. Yes. William Meadows. And then the list goes on here, because there were 43 that year. Interesting, and I don't like to point this out, but notice that Deke Summies, Hall of Famer, almost at the end. And he was deliberately trying to finish in last place, and he didn't make it. I'm serious. Others on the list are famous in their own right, and many of them were planning to be here, but sadly could not be here. But certainly our respect for them and love for them is pretty clear. This is a program from that year. Program's not so interesting, but in the newspaper that year, I cut out this ad from Fairway, and I want you to know that back then, you could get toilet paper. You could get 4 rolls of toilet paper for 39 cents. And you could get colored. Now, I don't even know where you can get colored toilet paper today. But if we knew then what we know now, we could really have made a killing on toilet paper. We could have stormed for Fairway and stocked up. But you know, that was what things cost. Here's the, I think, a really beautiful and the only photo of the pilots in 1973. And to be honest, not everybody in here is a pilot. But everybody's identified, including Rufus, who's being embraced by Jim Knight there on the end. I think this is the only picture where Mark Semich is actually photographed, looking like, I don't know, Colonel Sanders there. But an interesting, and I think, well, we all knew these people to one degree or another, and they were all such good people, that's all I can say. Now the rest of the decade, we could spend time on, and I'm not trying to slight the rest of the decade, but again, I promised 20 minutes here. So these are the champions from 70 through 79, and you notice that Michigan is represented there quite a lot. But I'm really joking because one person's represented there quite a lot. And he proved to all of us that flying a balloon is not just a matter of luck. Bruce Comstock, who's here tonight. Now I'm going to finish with my story, and then I want to hear yours. But I call this the abominable paragraph. Because if you were around at that time, Paragraphs were really, well, to say controversial is an understatement. In case you're not aware, a barograph is a recording altimeter. It's about as sophisticated as a cuckoo clock. They were made in Germany, actually. And the barograph test involved flying certain altitude profiles, and you got scored by how long you remained at those altitudes. Almost none of us had had any experience with barographs, and many of us either swore by barographs or swore at them. This is Deke, Norton, and Tracy Barnes. And I mentioned Deke's quest for last place. He so despised barographs that he deliberately flew outside the boxes so that he would get a 0 on it. And he did. But we were all kind of frustrated with barographs because A, they were expensive, B, we didn't have enough, they were hard to score, it was really a hassle. And spending your whole flight looking into the interior of an instrument didn't seem like what ballooning should be. So at the end of 1973, we had a membership meeting. In fact, it was right here on this campus, probably in a building that doesn't exist anymore, but the whole membership was there, and the final topic was the fate or the future of the barograph. A lot of editorials had been made, a lot of people spoke. Most spoke against the barograph, including Malcolm Forbes. And it seemed like the consensus was to phase out the barographs. And just as we were ready to pound down the gavel and abolish the barographs, Mike Keller got up. He got up in the back of the room and he said in a loud voice, "I protest. I think, and I'm convinced that every pilot on every flight in every event should carry a barograph. I think it's extremely important." And you could hear a groan throughout the whole audience. Oh no, we're going to be here for 20 more minutes while he pumps this up. But he said, yes, they should all carry a barograph on all flights, especially on the CNT event. And when they approached the target, they should launch that barograph down onto the target. And that was the end of that meeting. Now, to be truthful, I don't know what happened to barographs. I guess they're still around. But many of you have stories now that we want to hear. And so Don's going to circulate the microphone. Oh, one more thing. There's no sponsorship for this event. We didn't have, a budget at all. And so, to put it mildly, we're in the red. So we would like to solicit or appeal to donations, just so that we can maybe break even. So Don, any of you, I'm sure you have some wonderful stories. We want to hear.
Comment, question, story.
Right. A couple of quick stories, but first I'm reminded of one of my classmates in high school said he went to a reunion recently. He said everybody else sent their parents. Okay, two things. One, there's been some comments about Indianola in the early days, and trust me, it was a two-way affair. Indianola purely loved balloons, and the greatest picture, I think, was a young kid running down the street yelling, "The balloons are back, the balloons are back." And that was kind of the whole community attitude. And then I mentioned to somebody else a while ago, the early years, a lot of balloons stayed with families here in Indianola. And those relationships lasted many, many, many years. That was something Bill would attest to, I think. Anyhow, not a big surprise, but we actually wanted the balloons back desperately. 71 was, as already mentioned, was kind of a fluke here. And we said, let's try everything we can to keep them here. We actually had a committee set up, and we were instructed, if you will, that whatever a balloonist wants, he gets. I don't think Susie McClintock is here, but Pat McClintock was chairman of that committee, and she had what she called a magic wish. She said, if a balloonist wants something, he gets it. If he has a magic wish, he gets it. That was one of my stories. The other one is a bit of history that probably nobody, probably only 2 people in the world, and Marlene Wall and I are probably the only 2 left that know it, or in many respects even care. But in '73, a local farmer shut down the National Balloon Championships with an injunction. Said, it's my livelihood, cattle, crops, so and so. Got it? A judge to give an injunction to shut down the event. And the sheriff came to the chamber office and was looking for the BFA. And I said, why? And he told me the story, and I said, who has to be served? And he said, well, you BFA member. I said, I'm a member, serve me. So he did. So we did not want any of the BFA folks to know this was going on. So we handled it at the local courthouse, of course. Our attorney argued that, balloons at some altitude can't bother you. And the farmer agreed, that's true. And so we started talking about what altitudes. And he said, 1,000 feet. He said, no, that's too high. 500 feet? Yeah, that'd be about right, 500 feet. Anyhow, after long deliberation, we pretty much ended with the FARs. And the altitudes are pretty much what we fly with here today because of that lawsuit. But anyway, we got settled out of publicity of any that we knew of, and got handled. So, with that, I'll quit my stories. Thank you again.
I'm guilty. I'm guilty of a great deal of appreciation for everybody that's been involved in this event, as well as the original events here in Indianola. Frank Pritchard and I were 2 members of a 10-member group in Flint, Michigan called the Flint Sport Balloon Club. It was a group of political supporters. They got together to help re-elect Don Regal. He and I learned to fly together. And you want to talk about a classic example of blind leading the blind. We were in. I came to Indianola, and I've never met anywhere I've traveled better people, nicer people, kinder people. Thank you all. I have some partners in crime at this table. And we're not going to discuss that. I just want you to aware that I'm aware of the kind of people I hang out with. I'm often asked, how'd you get the name Captain Fogg? And the answer is, truthfully, I made it up. And the first question is, how? Was that from Phineas Fogg? I said, well, I didn't want to do any copyright infringement, so we had to change the F to PH. And that was the first reason. The second reason was that PH stood for we were going to pile it higher. And And then the other real reason that I started flying under a pseudonym was my bosses at a rather large, prominent New England insurance company that I worked for were less than impressed that this was my hobby. And I didn't understand why they were not comfortable until the president of the company says, "You're not that damn dumb. We don't want to lose your production." Oh, okay. So I just decided to change the name, and that's how I got that name. This is an awesome sport that we're in. It has opened so many doors, and I'm so grateful. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share this with you. Thank you.
We would like to ask Mr. Steve Lander to step forward. Steve is the recipient of the Ed Yost Master Pilot Award. He's going to do something on the
A
computer.
little off guard here. Because actually, although I was aware of this, it was going to happen at the museum tomorrow, so I'm a bit nervous about it, but thank you very much. Actually, it's been more than 40 years. This is a photo of myself and Norton launching our first balloon in 1962. Now, we didn't actually fly in this balloon, but it got us hooked on ballooning. Then we graduated to one that almost took us up. This was an old radar balloon. We threw a parachute on it, filled it with hydrogen. We were in high school at the time, and we thought it would be fun. We asked the people that sold us the hydrogen, or I should say, they asked us, "What are you going to do with all this hydrogen?" I said, "Well, we're going to do a lot of welding." Back then, they didn't care as long as you had the money. So that was Langram 1 in 1963. Then we got the idea of, well, if we're going to really get into this, we're going to have to sell this to somebody because we didn't have any money. We were just in community college. So there was a radio station in town called KMEN. They were in competition with another AM station. They were always doing stunts. So we sent them a letter on a whim. We said, "How much you guys buy a balloon? We'll fly it for you. Your DJs will get a lot of glory. It'll be a lot of fun." They bought it. And this is a picture of Don Picard delivering that balloon. It was an AX-5 pop top. And came in, of course, flew it until they got tired of it, which actually wasn't that long a time. Because they'd ask us to fly it, you know, at noon time for about 3 hours and hold it in the parking lot. This is Norton and I doing our prep work on it. And it was a lot of fun. Back then, there were no rule books, I guess you know. There was hardly any mention in the FARs. So you could pretty much do anything you wanted, and we just figured anything we could do was probably going to be possible until we found out otherwise. So, you know, you all went through that. You just had to learn on the fly. And so we were inflating in parking lots with ridiculous expectations. There it is, tied to the back of my Volkswagen Bug. We're trying to hold it down in 12-mile-an-hour winds. You can see the flag there. This was the second station that bought it after Cayman unloaded it onto KCBQ. They flew it, I should say, we attempted to fly it twice for them. And they said, we had enough of this. And so they sold it to us for $1,000. It was a $3,000 balloon set, the deal. And we immediately changed its name to Langram, which incidentally is here tonight, going to be inflated right down there. Now it's not as pretty as it was, but we flew this, in Indianapolis, of course at the Nationals, Columbus, Ohio races, and so forth. I don't recognize any of these people, not even myself. Let's see, did I skip anything? Yeah, that's Norton and I don't know, I didn't mean to bring you through all this nostalgia there, but that's us in Indianapolis. That's about 1968. Hey, I'll tell you this story, because it is so funny. We went there, you had to bring a barograph. We couldn't find a barograph, we couldn't buy one, we couldn't rent one. They said if you didn't show up with a barograph, you couldn't fly. We showed up anyway, because they paid us to be there. And we figured, okay, we'll just come and say, hey, we don't have a barograph, we'll disqualify ourselves, but we still want to fly. There were 10 balloonists there. Everybody said that's okay except one person. And Peter Pellegrino was the NA official. He said, I don't know, if one person objects, you can't fly. We come from California. So Deke Sonicson came to us after the meeting and he said, hey guys, the rules say you have to have a barograph, but it doesn't say what kind of barograph. So that night we went down to the gift shop in the hotel. We got a cigar box. We went down to Western Auto and got an automotive altimeter, stuck it inside, put a little lead pencil on the pointer, brought it to the meeting the next day and said, this is our El Producto barograph. And Peter Pellegrino said, looks good to me. So, thanks to Deke for that suggestion. Whoops, I'm going backwards. Then actually I'm getting ahead of the story because during the time that Cayman had this, there was a young songwriter, he was maybe 19, Jimmy Webb, he's on the right. And he went up on one of our non-flights. By then, I mean, it wasn't that spectacular. But he was inspired to write the song. In fact, I don't know if he was inspired so much as he was forced to. Because the DJ said, I'm writing a movie, I need a song, I want a balloon to be mentioned, and I want it to be called Up, Up, and Away. And he said, I can't write a song about a balloon, much less with the title Up, Up, and Away. But one afternoon he went away and 30 minutes later he had written a song. And he gave it to Johnny Rivers, who some of you might know from that period. Johnny Rivers gave it to this group, The Fifth Dimension. They recorded it. And to everybody's shock, it won 6 Grammys. 6 Grammys in 1968. Go figure. But it made Jimmy Webb's career. It didn't do too much harm to ours. And, well, all of you know about that song and are probably sick of it. But anyway, that's the story of our balloon that made some splash, I suppose you could say. In fact, This shot was in Paris, California. That's Jimmy Webb on the right, Don Picard on the left, and a few other Hollywood dignitaries there. We flew in celebration of his song there. Oh no, I'm going to bore you with this. This is just more of our stupid exploits at the time. But I would say something. You know, I always subscribed to the notion that safety in ballooning was three things: knowing when to fly, where to fly, and how long to fly. I can't say we were good to all of those concepts. In other words, we didn't always choose the best places to fly. Back in those days, there was no GPS. So you just looked at a road map and you said, well, that looks like a good place to fly. Let's drive down there and do it. And I'm reminded of Ronald Reagan's famous statement, where we're going, you don't need roads. But it turns out in ballooning, you do need roads. Because oftentimes, you end up in places that there are no roads. You've all been there. But you learn sometimes by the seat of your pants. But one thing for sure, we're all in ballooning for essentially the same reason. Our love of the serenity of ballooning, the adventure of ballooning, the real magic of ballooning. And it's been just a great, great experience for us, and we continue to do it, or at least admire it, as we do. It's a part of us. It's a part of our lives. For many of us, it's been our lives. So ballooning is what we all know to be the coolest way to get around the world, or get around as long as you don't care where you're going. So thank you.
Steve, that is actually the most interesting presentation I've ever been involved with on this award. But on behalf of the Balloon Federation of America, we want to congratulate you. Right here it says that you got your license October 10, 1967. So yes, you qualified quite some time ago. When you finally got around to filling out the application, I asked them, well, where you been and what's taking you so long? But we really want to thank you for everything you've done with this event, and congratulations on this nice award. So,
he was in the Air Force, couldn't fly because he had glasses, and he was really interested in avionics, and so he flew an airplane. He was a fixed wing operator. So then he started getting involved in parachuting. And in those days, parachuting wasn't what we know today, where you can decide where you're going. It was like a military parachute with the big boots and tuck, lean, and roll type stuff. Well, my mom said, Don, you've got to stop parachuting. Don't parachute. So he said, okay. Well, then the next week, he's reading an article about Don Picard. Calls up Don Picard and says, can you make me a hot air balloon? And can you get it here, and can you give me my license? Well, everybody knows Don Picard. Says, sure. So, 6 months later, Don shows up at Fort Dodge, Iowa, and brings us AM6 white balloon with blue and gold stripes, which was Notre Dame colors, because my dad went to Notre Dame. And my mom didn't know this was coming. And he inflates it, and what's on the side of the balloon but Merripy. And that's my mom's name. So he named the balloon after my mom, and she didn't object. And so mom's kind of the reason we might be here, because he stopped parachuting and started ballooning, and I'm fortunate enough to have Merripy 2 out in the field here. So he had Merripy 1, it was built in ~65, and then Merripy 2, the envelope was 12 bores instead of 8, and that was built in '75. So thank you so much.
I think Dad taught my father to fly, but we were able to stay at his house. But what was great is for all of you that are kids of all of you, all of the kids, we loved each other and got to know each other. So for us, every year this was a reunion. And then Father would let us have a slumber party at his house down the basement every year, which was so awesome. But Mom's favorite story is when Denise, Dad, and I were competing against each other one year, and we had one set of crew, and we inflated, ready to go, winds changed. We had to like deflate the balloons, move, re-inflate, and Mom's like, we are never doing that again. That's for sure.